Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Joel from Easy Engineering, and welcome back to another exciting video. Who knows? We'll see. Anyway, so today we're talking about 3 different ways on designing your kicks in Ableton, and I just thought I would go through and discuss a few techniques and approaches into how to get your kicks sounding better than just obviously loading in a kick sample. I mean, if the kick sample sounds good, then use it. As long as it sounds good in conjunction with your bass and it sits tight in the mix and you don't have to do much processing to it, then you've got yourself a good kick. But I always find that you need to do a little bit of processing, because especially if you're using a kick sample, your bass is not really designed for that kick or vice versa, so you kind of have to EQ it, compress it a little bit just to kind of get it to sit more tighter with your bass and also within the mix. So the first technique we're going to go through, I think, is personally probably one of the best ways in designing kicks for techno, house, deep house, things like that, because I've heard a lot in techno and house music where, especially in the beginning of the track, that they'll start with just like the high end of the kick and then they will bring in the low end of the kick to signify or indicate that the bass is the track is transitioned from the intro to the kick and bass and so on and so forth. And I've always thought that maybe they do it by layering. I mean, you can just go in and apply an EQ or filter to filter out all those frequencies and everything like that, but I feel like it's a little bit more hassle. If you get this kick sounding good from the start with your layers, you have a little bit more versatility with it. So yeah, let's go in and hear the first kick and bass. Now bear in mind, I haven't gone deep into the sound design for these kicks, done a bit of processing, but I can sit here for a lot more hours just trying to perfect this kick. But the idea is the technique and approach to designing this kick, so keep that in mind. Also the bass, anyway, so as you can hear, that's the kick over there, and what is being done is I have a drum rack open with 3 different samples being used. The first sample is to get my highs, so let's open that up, see what I've done here. So that's the wrong one. So over here I haven't done actually too much. Now less is more. I always find that less is more, but if you kind of think outside the box a little bit, I mean, you can go in and add a pitch envelope, and maybe that could do some interesting stuff if it works with the low end, and obviously if it works with your bass. But for this example, this minimal approach really worked. All I did was drop the gain a little bit. I added a high pass filter, and just to kind of get rid of all the low end of this kick. That's the original kick. So I like the high end of it, I didn't like the low end, so I kept the high end of it. I added a fade. You can bring it into a classic mode, but I just added a fade, and that is literally it. What I then went and did is I EQ'd some of the frequencies a little bit just to shape the sound a little bit more, and then I added a compressor just to compress the signal. Now moving on to my low end side of the kick, I found a kick which I thought had really nice low end, and what I've done is I've transposed it down by -3. I haven't done anything else over here. All I've done is I've added a low pass filter just to cut out all the highs. And I think the key over here, I've added a little bit of a fade over here too, just to kind of gel my high end of the kick and my low end of the kick a little bit better. And I think the key to this technique is to get the crossover frequency between these 2 samples to sit nicely. Now this third one is a great technique. A lot of people use it in a lot of different genres: psytrance, drum and bass, maybe high tech definitely, and obviously house. And that is to actually add just a hi-hat. And it just adds a little bit of an extra layer on top of the highs over here, just to kind of add more crisp to it, crispness, I guess. You see, it just brings out the highs a little bit more, makes it sound a little bit fuller, and then obviously in conjunction with everything else. Now, like I was saying, they could probably, have this at the start, with your hi-hats or whatever. Let's just say I added a hi-hat over here just to kind of better feel of how the kick and bass and the kick will work with conjunction of the whole track. So you kind of have to have those varying layers just to make sure, especially with percussion, when your kick sits tight and you can hear the click and the punch and the thump of the kick through the bass and obviously through the percussion, then you know you've got yourself a nice kick as long as it's sitting nice and tight within the mix. And this is a great way of testing that, really. So you know, you could have this kind of high part of your kick with your percussion in the beginning of the track, and then obviously, you know, bring in that low end. Let's do that again. Now with this one, I did create a different kind of bass just to see if it works with different sounds, you know, and stuff like that. Personally, I do prefer this kick and bass over here. Anyway, now onto the processing of the low end of this kick. So what I've done is I've done an EQ8, just kind of shaped the sound a little bit more, boosted my low end a little bit more just to bring out that thump, and then I've gone and compressed it. Now there's slight differences between the compressor of this one and my higher part of the kick, and that's because I wanted to control the low end of the kick as opposed to the high end of the kick. So I was a little bit more harsh on the transients and a little bit more harsher on the release time, and that's pretty much it. I mean, with the hi-hat, I literally did not too much. All I did was add a bandpass filter just to kind of zone in on the certain frequency that I think complemented my high-end kick, and then I just dropped the gain down a little bit. And moving on to the, I guess, overall processing of this kick, I've added a drum bus, made sure that I was in the right key over here. I've reduced the transients a little bit, dampened it a little bit, up to crunch, dropped the drive a little bit, and just messed about with the boom a little bit just to kind of shape that sound and get it to sound nice. As you can see, I have not added a full wet signal. This is only about 30% of the signal because I found like I just felt it was just it was too much. It was too much, so I brought it down to 30. Moving on, I added another EQ just to kind of shape the sound a little bit more over here. So if we take it out, I just feel like it kind of tightens up this mid-high mid-range over here a little bit better. It doesn't sound too bad with it off, but I just feel like it tightens it up a little bit more. And again, I've kind of gone in and just shaped it a little bit more within the problemed area, I thought. And then I've just gone and compressed it. Very slight compression over here. You can see very quick attack. I wanted to keep the transient a little bit, but not too much. And then obviously a quick release and not too much of a hectic threshold and not too much of a hectic ratio either. So that's it for this particular example of the kick. I said, you know, you're going to make sure that it works and it sits tight within the mix, and that's why I've got my hi-hat over here. Obviously you need a lot more elements to prove that, but yeah, that is pretty much the one approach that you can use. You can have, you know, multiple samples kind of pinpointing different frequency areas just to kind of build up one giant kick. If that works for you, if it doesn't work, don't do that. But usually between 2 and 3 kicks with maybe a hi-hat if it complements the kick overall. Moving on to the second example. Now, I'm not too fond with this kick, but I thought I'd try and be a little bit creative. And essentially this technique is literally just dragging and dropping your kick sample into a sampler or simpler, and then just kind of shaping the sound from there. So as you can see, I've got a low pass filter, just taking out some of the highs. I've brought it down to 2 voices. I didn't put it to 1 voice because I've actually doubled up on my MIDI channel over here, just because the kick itself was very subtle. And I thought just adding that, I mean, with all the processing, you can't really hear it, but I just felt like adding that was just adding an extra layer on top just to kind of beefing up the kick a little bit. And what I've done over here, I've done a drum bus, standard multi-band compressor. I've added a pedal, which actually shapes the sound really well. So you can hear over here, it was kind of what it was sounding like originally, and then adding the pedal, I don't know, just it complements it, it beefs it up a little bit more. And then obviously over here I've got my EQ8 shaping the sound, and then my compressor, put it to an expand mode. I just felt like I wanted to boost the transients a little bit. Sorry, not the transients, but just the output level of the kick, of the dynamics actually, but I did it quite subtly, as you can see. and with quite a big attack with an auto release, because I wanted to save those transients obviously. And now I felt like it didn't have enough punch, so I actually added in another layer of the kick with a different kick with a little bit more of a punch to it. And all I've done is I've added a band pass just to kind of zone in on the frequency that I want to complement the other kick, and then I've kind of EQ'd and shaped the kick a little bit more. So if we solo that, it just kind of adds a little bit of punch to the kick, nothing crazy. And then obviously we got to hear it with I could probably go in and just process this kick and bass a little bit more. Going back, I forgot to mention, sorry, I do have them in group channels, and all I've done is I've got a glue compressor and then an EQ, just kind of tightening up the kick and the bass and just obviously shaping it and gluing them together. I've got it on all of my examples over here. You can see just glue compressor and an EQ, and I've kind of set the parameters so they are obviously unique to each individual example over here. So because obviously I'm dealing with a kick and a bass, the attack and the release will be very similar. Like I've not actually changed them at all, just changed the threshold time I think on the one, and then the makeup gain obviously on the other. I could probably go in and mess about with the parameters to get them sounding a lot more tighter with one another, but just for this example, that's how I've got them. So the third and final example is actually designing a kick yourself within a kick VST, and I love to use bassism, especially for psytrance. I just feel like it really brings out that clicky punchiness of a kick that you hear in psytrance, whereas, you know, Nicky Romero, I like it, but it's a bit too over the top for me. I think bassism is quite simple in its you know, interface. So what I've done is I've mess about with the star over here. This is kind of indicating the clickiness of the track, and the T sweep is the punch of the kick. The V sweep indicates, you know, how sharp these two will act together. So what I've done is I've kept it to my key, which is in A. I've reduced the decay so it can blend better with my bass, and I go into the envelope section and I've just shaped the amp envelope a little bit more, because with a kick there's a lot of muddiness frequencies or resonant frequencies around this area, and which is why you'll usually find yourself EQing around this frequency range, which is about 200 to 400 hertz, 500 hertz maybe. And that's what I've done, just to shape it a little bit more, and then obviously dropped off the decay a little bit. And what I've done with the processing is I've added a compressor, fairly moderate compression over here, and then an EQ just to shape the kick a little bit more, and another EQ just to shape it a bit more. Now, are these great kicks? I think this one's probably my favorite, this one's my least favorite, and this one I'm actually quite happy with. But again, you got to do this all to taste. My whole objective over here is just to discuss the different techniques that you can use when designing your kicks in Ableton. If you know of any more, please feel free to leave a comment down below and I'll try and cover it. But that, I'm going to leave the video over here. I think that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something from it. If you did, leave a like, comment down below, and obviously if you want to see more of these videos, then please hit that subscribe button and make sure that you hit that little bell button on the side so you get a notification when I release another video. Anyway, that's it for the video. That's it from me. I hope you have a lovely day and enjoy the video. Thanks for watching.